Welcome to Recalculating Small Business. Like its award-winning book, Recalculating is dedicated to small business in America. Your hosts are Don Mazzella and Dan Perkins. Don Mazzella is the editor-in-chief of the Small Business Digest. Dan Perkins is a registered investment advisor with 43 years' experience in managing money.
Dan Perkins here, your co-host, along with Don Mazzella of Recalculating for Small Business. Our radio program is dedicated to you, helping the small business owners increase their profits. We draw our name from Recalculating, voted the best small business book of 2017 by the Independent Press. In this book, it features ways to grow your small business. Now, here's Don Mazzella.
My co-host, Dan Perkins, is on assignment, but we're really lucky today. We have Ken Jacobus. He's CEO and leader of a company that I've personally enjoyed for many years. Ken, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Don.
Well, Ken, tell the way we like to start, tell us a little bit about yourself personally and then your company before we get into anything else.
Sure. I'm 47 years old. I live in Wilton, New Hampshire, and I'm the CEO of Good Start Packaging. I've run the company for about 10 years. Prior to founding Good Start Packaging, I was an executive in the sales capacity for a number of high-tech companies out in the San Francisco Bay Area. Also started my career in New York City in advertising. And around 2008, I had a pretty successful career at a company called Macrovision, now taken over by TiVo, and did very well there and traveled the world quite extensively, but wanted to do something different, wanted to do something that was connected to something a little more environmentally sustainable, where I could be closer to home and feel like I'm making a bigger impact on the world, a more positive impact, and leaving a legacy for that my kids could be proud of as well. I had a couple of young kids at the time. So I quit my job and took a year off and explored lots of different things around sustainability and kind of ran right into an issue around disposable plastics. I got really educated about some of the issues that are going on in the environment about plastic and how its detrimental effect on our oceans and our waterways and our land, and just how we're using it at an unsustainable rate and we can't recycle our way out of it. But at the same time, I found some really interesting, innovative companies that were developing for the food service industry, which uses a lot of plastics. Were developing innovative plant-based containers, takeout containers for food service, for restaurants. So I started this company called Good Start Packaging to help those companies bring these products to market, introduce them to restaurants. And so Good Start Packaging is a mission-based company that is focused on helping restaurants around the country and increasingly around the world source more environmentally friendly takeout containers for their restaurants. And these are containers that are made from renewable plant-based materials. They are compostable and biodegradable. So they actually compost back into the earth, into something that's they're made from plants and healthy materials, and they compost back in the earth into more products, more plants, whether they be from wheat straw or sugarcane or a variety of other types of materials. And it's been an exciting ride. We've grown every single year for the last 9.5 years. The last 3 years, we've had 60% growth average, and it's been exploding for a variety of reasons. But society, is really becoming more conscious around this. There's been a lot of laws that have passed in various cities around the country that are either banning more toxic plastics like styrofoam and/or, in some cases, even mandating the use of compostables. So it's been pretty exciting for our business and pretty challenging just to keep up with the growth of it. But it's been a lot of fun.
Well. With companies like Starbucks saying that they're banning plastic straws, that certainly bodes well for you. Have you developed a biodegradable straw yet?
Well, we haven't, but the companies that we partner with have, which has been really exciting. And the news around things like Starbucks has been really great for us because it really has raised the visibility and lended a lot of credibility to it when large companies realize that they are part of the problem, but there are really great perfectly reasonable solutions that are totally sustainable out there. The straw issue in particular has really just exploded around the country, and we have a straw business that we sell a really awesome renewable straw, a variety of different straws, but they either come from they're paper-based straws or bioplastic straws made from corn. They work really great, and people love them, and it's really, lots of people are calling about them, and they're now asking about other products, and they're starting to realize that their restaurant needs to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. So that has raised the consciousness level. It's raised a lot of conversations in people. People are starting to realize that, they matter, whether they're using a cup or, a variety of other types of materials at restaurants. That stuff all adds up, and they're realizing that they need to make a change. Luckily, the industry has really scaled up, so there is very much less and less of a reason to use environmentally friendly products, because oftentimes they cost the same as a plastic alternative, and they work just as well. So it's kind of a win-win.
Well, let me ask you this: you went from relatively big companies to a small company. What have you learned in your time running a relatively small company that you'd pass on to our audience?
Well, I've learned a ton. It's been one of the best courses, MBA courses that I could possibly imagine getting, and I continue to learn and grow every day, and that's what makes it so exciting. In addition to sort of making a difference, but I think that probably I've learned a lot of things, but probably one of the biggest things that I've learned, I've said for the last few years that there's really two components that are critical to running a successful business and frankly running anything that matters that you care about in life. I used to think that it was just two things, and that is heart and grit, meaning you have to put your heart into something. It can't be about ego. It can't be about just money, because you will burn out. You have to do something that gives you fulfillment, that makes a difference in people's lives and adds value to people's lives. And you have to have a lot of tenacity. That's where grit comes in. It's one of my favorite words. You have to, take a lot of punches and deal with a lot of disappointments and challenges, and really work on your mindset and continue to get back up again. And that's really the name of the game in long-term success is the people that are really successful, in my view, are the people that just continue to get back up. But then the third thing I think I probably learned in the last couple of years in particular that I really hadn't realized was also a really important component, and that is patience. You can have all the heart and grit in the world, but sometimes things just take time. It takes time to figure things out, figure a market out. It takes money. It takes time, and sometimes it takes, if you're looking to change an industry and change people's hearts and minds about something and inspire people to make a difference, as we are in our business. Changing, long-held consumer belief systems and behaviors takes time, and so you have to have patience, whether it's with employees and motivating them to do what you want them to do, or with customers or suppliers. It definitely takes time, and so having patience is really important as well.
Well, I've seen studies in various ways, and I've seen some focus groups. Do people really choose to patronize a place that's advertises environmental friendly, or is it like a checkpoint?
That's a great question. I love that question, and our company is very much about honesty and transparency. And when we go in, we talk to a prospective customer. More than likely, they've come to us anyway. They already want to do this. We do very little outbound work. But when we do, we don't try to gin up a bunch of statistics that say, 80%. There's lots of statistics out there. You can find statistics all over the place to make a case for pretty much anything. How 80% of consumers would like a restaurant better because it's got environmentally friendly products. I think people go to a restaurant like they go to a lot of places because they like the experience. It has meaning to them. There's an emotional component to it. They have a connection to the food or the restaurant or the experience. And yes, it would be nice if they, served healthy food and served it in healthy containers as well. But, when people come to us, they're coming to us because it just feels like the right thing to do. They don't need an economic justification for it, or 100 customers coming up to them saying you better do this or else. The kind of people that come to us are farm-to-table restaurants, they're artisan coffee shops, they're juice bars around the country, people that have a passion for making a difference in the health of their communities and the customers that come in there, and it just makes sense to them to serve that food in environmentally friendly containers. It just is part of who they are. And they want to be part of something bigger, part of a story. And I think most people, whether they be end consumers at a restaurant or wholesale customers of ours, or anything you buy, really, you're buying with emotion. You're buying because you want a connection. You may back it up with some kind of economic justification, but the truth is if you can inspire people and get them to believe that they are part of something bigger and this matters, and they're not alone and they can feel safe, they will buy from you. And that's really our value proposition. Of course, the products have to work really well. Of course, we have to execute really well with our service. Of course, we have to be cost effective and market competitive and so forth. But at the end of the day, we really focus on all the good that people are doing and that emotional component, and not so much sort of the fear factors, if you will, that a lot of other folks sell, like, oh, there's the world is going to hell and all your customers are saying you need to do this or else. I think that's disingenuous, and I think that's the wrong way to go.
But is your product line price competitive with the other, the plastic side of it, or the non-biodegradable side?
So the answer to that is typically, increasingly, yes. It really depends. There's so many different variables, and how people look at price competitive is, it just varies what exactly they're comparing. But yes, increasingly, and it also depends on the category of product that you're talking about. But things like hot cups and cold cups that we sell lots of that are biodegradable, those are increasingly very competitive. And if they're more, they might be a half a cent or something more, or a cent more, kind of thing. That kind of order of magnitude.
Well, you're also here because someone sent me an email about how you can reduce your health care costs, and I was intrigued by it. And do you want to explain to our audience the other reason you're here? I find I could spend the whole time on this whole topic, but before we go back to it, I want our audience to learn a little bit about that, because healthcare is still the first or second biggest concern of small business.
Super important, yeah. So happy to talk about that. And so that has been an important consideration of ours, especially as we started to hire more full-time employees and full-time employees that had families. As I said, we are a mission-based company. We certainly try to pay competitively. I think we do for the New Hampshire market. And people want to come to us not just for the money. They want to come to us because they want a different environment. They want a great culture where they can believe in a product, they can believe in a team. But it's oftentimes a challenge because healthcare is a big expense for a lot of people and a big concern that a lot of prospective employees have. And increasingly, it's a competitive advantage to obviously offer good benefits like that. So a few years ago, when we were really starting to scale up and we could afford to look at things like that, I was looking at various options for being able to fund that. And we're a very lean operation. We're always looking to do more with less. We scrutinize our books really well. We operate very efficiently. And I came across a credit card offer. So I'm kind of a credit card junkie. Or credit card reward junkie, I should say. I love credit card rewards. I love hotel rewards and things like that. And I've been a member of them for years and years, and came across a credit card deal with the Spark card from Capital One that was really one of the best, if not the best, reward program that I'd ever seen. And it's focused on small businesses. And their deal is they offer unlimited 2% cash back on everything you buy, like this, not restricted to any categories or anything. And at the time, we were spending a lot of money on credit cards because it's convenient. It extends our payment terms a little bit until we have to pay the bills. It just, was an easy thing for us to do for our accounting system and so forth. So we latched onto that deal because we were charging, at the time, a couple of $1 million a year, and now it's much more than that on credit cards. And that, in doing that, that actually gave us last year, for example, $36,000 in cash back for basically doing nothing other than what we were doing anyway. And this year it's going to be around $45,000. And that, as it happened last year, was pretty much exactly what we spent on healthcare. So it was a huge relief to us to be able to comfortably offer health insurance to our employees last year for the first time for all of our employees. That basically funded it. And so it's given us a really great competitive advantage without us having to have a negative impact on our margins.
Okay. So someone said that small business lives on credit cards, and if you ever took them away, a lot of small businesses would die. So now that we've got that out of the way, I'd like to go back because we're talking with Ken Jacobus. Ken, the name of your company and your website for our audience?
Sure, it's Good Start Packaging, and the website is goodstartpackaging.com.
How did you come up with that name?
Well, we say that anything you do for the environment that's positive on a regular basis is a good start. We think that anything disposable isn't necessarily the end game, but when you are transitioning from something that is not sustainable, like plastic, and into something more sustainable, like compostables, it's a good start. And we try to really inspire people to take one small step, each and every day to make a difference, because it all collectively adds up. And so it's kind of an effort to be humble and say, this is a great alternative. It is not perfect, but it is a much better alternative. And what it does is it raises the consciousness and makes people start to think, wow, I can actually make a difference in the environment without costing too much. I feel really good about it. Now what else can I do? And so that's kind of what Good Start means.
That's really interesting. Well, now you take vegetables or organic material and turn it into plates and things like that?
Well,
exactly
kind of. Yeah, a little bit better than that. So a lot of the products, they do come from plants, a variety of different materials, increasing number of types of plants that can be made into plates, cups, takeout containers, bags. They may be sugar cane, wheat straw, things like that. And what's really exciting about a lot of these things is that the parts of those plants that are used for our containers are quite oftentimes agricultural byproduct, which means that they are kind of a discarded material from something that's growing already for food. So it's not the food part of the plant. It's the part that historically has been discarded, oftentimes actually incinerated, which is an environmental problem. And they've realized that, wow, this is kind of a material that we can actually monetize, these farmers, and in so doing transition people off of plastic into something more renewable. And then when you send these products after you've used them into a compost facility, and there's lots and lots of cities now that offer compost pickup service, just as they do for recycling. That compost is actually becomes really rich soil, which is then sold or given back to farmers to then plant more plants. So it really kind of completes the cycle. Much more sustainable, uses less energy, way better for air quality and land management, and keeping products out of the landfill than their alternatives like plastic. So it's really a win-win for farmers. It's a win for the environment. It's a win for people's health.
So, how do you go out and buy the byproducts, same as you would a petroleum stock? How does it work?
Well, so we are a supplier. We're a distributor. We partner with the factories that are already doing that, and we have products made for us. And so they, depending on the product, if it's, let's say, a clear cup, for example, like a drinking cup, for example, made very much the same as a traditional plastic cup. The difference being, though, that traditional plastic obviously comes from a petroleum-based product. It requires more heat and therefore electricity and energy to actually make it. And it is very rarely recycled, and so therefore it's just not sustainable. It piles up in our oceans and our landfills and so forth. So our products are made the same way, but they're from basically spinning out the sugars of a plant like dextrose and forming that into a bioplastic. If you touch one of these things, these cups, you won't be able to tell the difference between that and a traditional cup. It's pretty amazing what you can do with bio-based material these days.
Well, that's true. One of my recent programs, I had a science fiction person talking about the space race, etc. But the important thing, as he pointed out, was that the science fiction writers talked about doing that 20 and 30 years ago, and even 40 or 50 years, and now we're doing it, and pretty soon we may even see the ability to create cups and things out of organic material in our homes, and yet you're doing it right there. You and your suppliers are doing it. So it sounds almost science fiction, but it does seem that it would be helpful for the future of this planet. But what got you involved in all of this?
With the healthcare issue, or with what?
The environmental issue and the good start, etc. You sound like you're a true advocate, but what made you an advocate?
Yeah, sure. So, well, I think I've always been an environmentalist. I've always been passionate about the environment. It's hard to live in San Francisco and not care about the environment. I've always liked nature quite a bit. But as I learned more and more about some of the problems that plastic is causing in our environment these days, we literally have an ocean of plastic. We are ingesting this stuff because it's now in the food chain, because we have so much pollution in our oceans now. It's in our fish, it's in our waterways. It is just, just unsustainable at the rates that it's adding up. And, I used to think as an environmentalist that recycling was the right answer, and I used to dutifully, recycle. And then I started to learn about some of the issues around the recycling industry, that really nothing is actually ever recycled. Most products, if you're lucky, they're downcycled into some other type of material like a rug or a carpet or a jacket. But more than likely, products that are put into recycling bin are incinerated. They're oftentimes incinerated. They're oftentimes sent overseas to places like China. We just there isn't a big enough market for recycling. We're using more and more plastic. We're recycling more and more, but we keep using more plastic. So we actually recycle about 7% of the plastic that we use. So we just simply can't find a market for all the recycled plastic. And so I kind of learned about all this stuff and was really started to get really concerned about the upstream environmental issues around plastic, some of the chemicals and things that are in it, and how that's pervasive in our environment, and all the downstream impacts that are affecting our planet, and eventually, as I said, are going to affect my children and my children's children. And I couldn't, my conscience just couldn't live with the idea that, that I was going to continue to extract wealth from the earth and not give anything back, and really leave the earth in a worse shape than it was when I got here. And so it was kind of an easy decision for me because, I've got that voice in my head, and I just, I wanted to listen to that and do something that made a difference.
Well, you're in, if I heard you right, New Hampshire, your company, correct?
That's correct.
New Hampshire is one of those states where the young people seem to leave, and it's had problems. How have you found the labor market, and how do you get people to buy into your company's mission? Yeah,
sure. So it's actually, for us anyway, hasn't been as challenging as I do hear that it is for other folks, in part because I think people are increasingly looking for something else. They're looking for something that actually has a purpose. They don't just want to work in a cubicle farm somewhere for a company that isn't doing anything, that they feel is worthwhile. So, it's a variety of different things that we do. It's, as I said, focusing on things like benefits, doing more with less, finding ways of providing benefits to our employees and compensation and still be competitive in, what is largely still a commodity business, making it a fun place to work, and really articulating what our vision is to our employees. We're constantly working on, team building activities and working on not just being a company that's built on transactions and making more money. We certainly are making more money every year. We're grateful for that. But on really providing real value, and that's in the form of inspiring people to make a difference, in the form of actually becoming really a de facto sales and marketing company for our customers. Most of our companies are fairly unsophisticated, small and medium-sized businesses. These are owner-operated restaurants, food trucks, catering companies around the country. And they don't have the resources oftentimes to tell their often very compelling, very amazing stories about how they started a business. And so we actually, in addition to providing, consultative sales for them to help them find great packaging, we also help them market and tell their story. We do that through our social media. We actually invest in video for our clients. We have a video production team that goes out at no charge and does these really cool videos and tells the story of our customers. So I think people come to us because they see that. They see our vision is about something bigger. It is about proving that business can be, yes, a profit machine, but also a force for good. And that means not just a force for good for our employees, but for all the stakeholders in our value proposition, our suppliers, our employees, and the planet, and of course our customers as well. And people see that. If you articulate that vision and you actually act on it every day, it's one thing to talk about it, but if you actually are a person of integrity, a team of integrity, and you do what you say day after day after day, it's really not that hard to attract good people. I think people are starving for that authenticity to work for a company that they actually believe in. So it's been really refreshing to see that.
That's really terrific. We're talking with Ken Jacobus. The name of his company is Good Start. Ken, your website again and how people can reach you?
Sure. They can go to goodstartpackaging.com. You can email me at ken@goodstartpackaging.com. And we are located in New Hampshire. Our phone number is 603-232-8229.
Thank you so much for being with us, Ken. It's been a really illuminating time. A link to Ken Jacobus' company will be on recalculating.biz tonight, where you can hear this and every other past and future program. Thank you so much for being with us, Ken.
Thank you.
Want to know more about health savings accounts for your company or yourself? Go to 2hsa.com and get a free employer's primer. Health savings accounts are a cost-effective way of offering health care benefits to your employees and yourself. HSAs build retirement funds for your employees, improve morale, and reduce your health care benefit cost. For a free employer guide to HSAs, go to 2hsa.com. That's 2hsa.com.
Dan Perkins here from recalculating.biz with your featured book. I want to tell you about a recent interview I had with Bob Bethel, a turnaround specialist with lots of success in small business. Bob's new book is Strengthen Your Business, Fail-Proof Strategies for Small Business. He tells us of his life successes and failures that have made him and his clients so successful. Over the years, Bob has brought 77 companies back from the brink and changed them into thriving, profitable businesses. His energy is amazing, and at 74, he proves that you can still have a great deal to give others if you just try. His suggestions are easy to understand and very helpful. One insight struck me was that most companies do not have a plan. The old Chinese proverb says, if you don't know where you're going, then any road will take you there, is true today. Bob Bethel's book, Strengthen Your Business, can be found at Amazon.com or can be ordered at your local bookstore. This has been Dan Perkins with your Recalculating.biz featured book.
My co-host, Dan Perkins, is on assignment. We do have with us today Pete Wiliams, who is here to talk about the levers to fast small business growth. Pete, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me, Don. Really excited to be here.
Well, Pete, as we ask all our guests, Tell us a little bit about yourself personally, a little bit about your company, and finally, tell us a website that our listeners can reach you at.
Sure. Well, I think the accent gives part of the story away. I'm from Australia, currently in New York City on a book tour, which is nice and exciting. But my core business is in telecommunications, which is boring and bland as it can get, really. We consider ourselves a sales and marketing company that happens to be in the telco space, and that's the core of our business. As a way to balance that, I also have a consulting company, Preneur Group, which is where I write, I consult about some of the business frameworks and strategies we've used in our world to drive some success to a certain degree and help other business owners do the same. Where to find me? Oh, look, there's probably plenty of places. Right now, if I can be so blunt, cadencebook.com is a great place to go right now. It's the book's out at the moment. It's got links to everything else on there. So cadencebook.com is a great place if people can check that out.
Well, this is radio. So can you spell it out for our audience?
Absolutely. CADENCEBOOK.com. Cadencebook.com.
Okay. Now, having gotten that out of the way, I'm going to ask you one question and then turn the floor over to you. What are the levers to small business growth?
Yeah, sure. It's a very broad question, but I think it's a really important one to ask because, in our business when we started, the telco 12, 13 years ago, we didn't have a framework or any sort of idea of what really drove the profit in our business. And we kind of went at it very, very hard and focused all about getting new leads and getting new customers in the door. And what we actually did when we started the business was we would, generate the sale, convert that lead into a buyer, and then literally grab that customer and give it to a subcontractor, also known as a competitor, to do the installation of the phone system. And it was a great little model for us to prove that we could generate leads and make sales, but we were leaving so much money on the table. So at one point, we kind of felt we hit a glass ceiling. So we went, okay, what is it that drives the profit in our business and what drives profit in other businesses? And this is sort of where we figured out there's 7 key drivers or levers, as you said, that are driving profit in any business, whether you're a dentist in New Jersey, you're a telecommunications company in Australia, you're an accountant or a landscaper in England. You could be anything. These 7 levers apply. So you've got your suspects. These are the people who come to your website, walk into your retail store. They're the people who kind of first, understand you exist and have a little bit of an interaction with you. The next thing you need to think about in your business growth is what percentage of those suspects become prospects. Actually put their hand up and say, look, I'm qualified to be sold to. They might have downloaded a lead magnet or a free report on your website. They might have sat down and actually tried on a pair of shoes in your retail store. There's always a differentiation between a suspect and a prospect. And I think a lot of business owners don't make that distinction in their mind. You've then got conversions. How many people open up their wallet and buy from you? Your average item price, pretty straightforward. Items per sale. What are you currently doing right now to ask the cliche question, would you like fries with that? You've got your repeat transactions per customer. How often do they come back from you again and buy from you again? And then you've got your margins. So realistically, like those 7 things, they're your 7 drivers of profit, and they apply to any business. And, you're probably right to think that there's nothing new in this. There's nothing really amazing in that. What we found for our business, though, was when we actually sat down and started playing with these levers and playing with the math, the massive distinction and shift in our success was realizing this thing called the power of 10% wins. And that if you want to double your business, all you need is a 10% boost in each of these 7 areas. And the compounding effect is doubling the profit. And I think for so many business owners, the only way they think they can grow their business is to get more leads, get more suspects through the door. And they spend all this time hustling and busting their butts to get more people through the door. But that's really, really hard to double or triple your suspects. Whereas to go for a 10% boost, to increase your conversion rates from 20% to 22% with some better social proof in your proposals, Getting, customers to come back and, just 10% more customers to come back and buy from you again. That's quite easy with putting a small, simple thing in place. Getting people to, maybe you've got an average items of 1.2 per sale. Every so often someone buys a second item. Well, what do you have in place that's systemated and automated to take that 1.2 to 1.32? Just small, incremental 10% boosts are a great way to grow your business. And it works as a much better framework for your focus as an entrepreneur and small business owner.
Pete, I'm going to interrupt you right there to ask you to go back and briefly summarize what you just said. This is radio, and I want people to hear it. Can you briefly summarize these first couple of these first points for our audience?
Absolutely. So there's only 7 things that drive profit in any business, and you need to be aware of those. You've suspects, prospects, conversion rate, average item price, items per sale, transactions per customer, and your margins. They're the 7 elements that drive profit in any business. Then once you identify those, all you need to worry about in your business when you're working on your business is 10% increases in each of those areas. Just small 10% wins. Don't need to double anything. Let the power of compounding give you that bottom line result.
So if I could summarize it for our audience and make sure I understand it, you're in effect saying there are 7 levers, and if you can increase each of them by just 10%, overall you can really drive growth. Would that be a summation of what you...
Absolutely. Doubles your profits.
That's an interesting concept. I don't want to break it up, but I got to... How did you come up with this, Pete?
Yeah, well, we just sat down in our business. There was no sort of mystical moment. It was a culmination of just working through this, going, well, what is working in our business? What's driving the profit? What drives profit in other businesses? And over time, we just figured out that there are these 7 elements, and they are applicable to every business, no matter what you are or where you are. And then we started playing with the numbers and going, okay, well, if we want to double our profit, how does this math work? We started just literally over time playing around with it, and then we just hit on this nail that 10% wins, 10% improvements. It's so much easier, it's less stressful, it's so much more achievable, and then just the math just plays out.
You're absolutely right. It's simple. Now, how do you go about talking to people and getting them to identify with this and implement it?
Yeah, it's always the hardest part, because I think, the inertia for a lot of people is I've got to double my leads to double my business. And I think it's about taking that moment and stepping back and going, okay, what are these for your business? What is currently happening in your business that's systemated and automated to, for example, get people to come and transact with you again? How are you tracking your team and your staff to make sure they're asking the would you like fries type question? It's taking that moment to really clarify what those 7 levers are for your business, and then figuring out what is happening right now. That's the best place to start, is just take a pulse check.
Keep going. I have a lot of questions, but you're so articulating it so well. I'd much rather you tell our audience.
Sure. Well, I think once you actually do identify what you're currently doing right now, I hear this so often where people then realize some stuff that's not working, and they get 10% wins just by almost plugging the holes. In our business, it's a terrible example, but it's true. At one point, we turned our AdWords off for a holiday period. It was a long weekend, extra holiday here home in Australia. So we turned our AdWords off, and we forgot about it for a couple of months until we started, checking what we were doing and what was generating our leads, and we found this massive gap in what we were doing. So by simply just, taking that time to reestablish what is our levers in our business, how does it apply to our business, and measuring that, we went, oh, hang on, there's a massive gap here. As someone who recently read my book, Cadence, and was implementing this in their business, found a $20,000 hole in their bottom line, which they fixed in 1 week by just figuring out, well, what are our current margins? Where are we currently spending our money? And they hadn't done that analysis for so long. And a $20,000 bottom line swing happened in a week. There's stories of other companies who have just gone, oh yeah, let's just check what's going on here, and they forgot that their staff weren't asking, would you like fries with that? They forgot their team were no longer following what was meant to happen. There's people who have, forgotten to pay their email autoresponder software bill, and what they thought was going out with automated marketing to get repeat clients had stopped happening. So I think, again, you don't have to necessarily go out and be creative and come up with brand new ideas to grow your business and get these 10% wins. Quite often is when you go through the process of just identifying what the levers are for your business and confirming what's actually happening, most business owners can actually almost double their business just by plugging the holes in the bathtub they forgot were leaking.
We're talking with Pete Wiliams. He's an Aussie. He's here in New York talking about his book. Pete, your book again, and how people can find it, and you?
Yeah, sure. So Cadence, A Tale of Fast Business Growth. So it's a parable. The book started off as a traditional kind of non-fiction business book, but it just wasn't engaging. And we're really trying to help, the average small business owner out here who maybe doesn't read a lot of business books. So the book's a story, and it's based on a true story of literally a bike store across the road from my office back in Australia, hence the term Cadence, because it's obviously a cycling term and it definitely applies to business growth. And it's a story of this bike store that was struggling to grow. And as a side hustle, the owner of the bike store had a triathlon coaching business. And he started coaching this athlete to his first Ironman triathlon. And during the 20 weeks of him coaching this athlete, the athlete, who was a business owner, started teaching the bike store owner about the 7 levers framework and this power of 10% wins. So it's a parable story going through the journey of applying the 7 levers to a business. And there's lots of really engaging stories, and it's won some awards, which has been pretty humbling, and available where all good books are sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, everywhere like that, or cadencebook.com. You can get a lot more information there. But it's been really cool. The journey of writing a book and sharing the story has been a very interesting one. Well,
before we go further, you say the man across the road, but I'm not hearing clearly. What kind of a business did he have?
A bike store. Literally, it was a bike store across the road from my office, the telco that we have in Melbourne, Australia. Literally, across the road was a bike store. And it was, funnily enough, opened by the high school sports teacher that I had studied under in high school. And he coached me to my first Ironman triathlon during this 20-week period. So, it's based on that true story, as every good book has. It's got some extra elements, some extra conversations, some extra learnings in there. But the whole story, it's a short read. We've tried to keep it like a one-flight read so you can get the lessons really quickly in a very engaging way.
Well, I'm going to admit my ignorance. Winston Churchill said America and Britain is separated by a common language, but what did he sell? I'm confused. You're saying a bar?
No, a bicycle.
Bicycles. Okay.
There you go. The Aussie accent coming out then. A bike store, a bicycle store, cycling.
That's my fault. My wife says I need a new hearing aid, and she's probably right. But bicycles, okay. I want to be clear on that because I love you Aussies and New Zealand. I think they're, outside of the U.S., the 2 best countries in the world.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys. I've been in Australia, and I always think of Australia and New Zealand as one and the same, though they are very different. But now you're on a tour. You're here. What are you seeing as the differences between small businesses in Australia and here? Have you noticed anything that you'd like to share with the audience?
Really good question. I think, culturally there's some massive differences. In Australia, we have this thing called the tall poppy syndrome. And it's alive and well. And the tall poppy syndrome is, don't get too big for your boots. As soon as you start really trying to, overly sell yourself or, be successful or have success, there's this underlying culture of chopping you off at the knees. The tall poppy syndrome, they cut off the tall poppies. And, one thing I love about America and North America is just the support that you guys have of having a go. I'm going to start my small business. I'm going to try and be successful. And there's a lot more support and love and encouragement for that here in this country, which I absolutely love. And then there's definitely, startup is big in Australia and it's happening, yet the tall poppy syndrome is true. You don't want to get too big for your britches. Whereas over here, it's very, very different. So I think that is a massive difference. Yet I still feel there's not enough support in both countries in terms of educating business owners. Particularly back home in Australia, the trades, if you're a carpenter, if you're an electrician, if you're a motor mechanic, these jobs, you go and get that job and you get taught how to be extremely good on the tools. You could be a great tiler. You could be a great mechanic. Then the progression generally is you go out and you start your own business. You go and start your own plastering or tiling or mechanical business. Yet you have no business skills. You don't get taught those business skills and what it means to grow a business. You're very good on the tools. You could be great at fixing the problem and solving whatever it is that you do, yet there's no real path or education that makes it easy for these kids and these startup businesses to actually understand what it is that grows profit, what it is that grows a business. They're two very different things, being on the tools, working in the business, and then working on the business.
That's really great advice. And you feel that, do you think here in America we give more support to that than in Australia? Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah, I think there's a bit more support for it. There's definitely more encouragement for it over here in America. I think there's still some lacking support-wise in both nations. I think there's still not enough education and support for particularly trades, people who've done a trade who then go out and start their business. There's plenty of business schools here to encourage entrepreneurship and encourage, traditional business growth. But those who sort of open a retail store or start a trade, they're often doing it out of their passion for the solution they provide. They love computers. I'm going to start a computer store. I love building. I'm going to be a builder. Yet, you start a business out of your passion for the tools doesn't necessarily translate to a productive and profitable business itself. We were very lucky when we started, my partners and I, the telecommunications company we have in Australia. None of us are actually telco guys. I still, 12 years later, have no idea how to program or install a telephone system. So we started the business from a marketing and sales perspective. We didn't get bogged down with the tech side of the business, which is very great for us. It helped us really cut through and grow quite fast. Yet our competitors, were all about the technology. They were telco guys, and that limited them to be able to see the forest from the trees and work on their business rather than in it.
That's really a profound statement. I have to think about it. But now let me step in and hit you with a different one. Australia is very much of a masculine country. Do you see the difference? There's a report out today that women ownership has exploded in small business over the last 10 years. Do you see the same phenomenon happening in Australia, or is it still a male-dominated small business world?
Yeah, look, good question. There's definitely that outback, rugged, masculine kind of thing in Australia, yet, quote-unquote, lady startup is definitely a bigger thing. There's a bit of a groundswell happening in Australia under this term, this, call it hashtag lady startup. And there's some very successful female startup and successful entrepreneurs in Australia really driving this shift towards this concept of lady startup. And I'm really excited to see that. I'm involved in one of the universities in Australia, Deakin University, and we've got a range of stuff happening and really trying to encourage the involvement of the women into the space, whether it's the startup incubators we have or the different programs. We are very much trying to support that. And the shift is happening. It definitely is happening. Is it where it needs to be? Is it 50-50 yet? I don't think so. But I do think it is definitely moving towards that, which is really, really exciting to see.
Well, I read someplace that one of the problems is that there's still, within the financing world, a prejudice or leaning towards the male side rather than the female side. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, look, I think, I'm looking out, around, the Wall Street area while I'm walking around New York City, and there's definitely tends to be a lot more testosterone in the air around that sort of finance world, and that trickles down from, Wall Street to Main Street and, local finance sort of spaces. So I definitely think it is still skewed that way, and, things are shifting, but unfortunately some of this stuff does take time. But I would absolutely agree with you, Don, that definitely that is something that needs to change and needs to change quick.
Well, I'll steer you back to safer ground because you've been a great guest. But now, the name of your book again and how people can get it? We're talking.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Wiliams.
It's Cadence, A Tale of Fast Business Growth. So Cadence, CADENCE. Cadence is in the cycling term. It's available where all good books are sold. Or for more information about the book, cadencebook.com. is a good place to start.
You say you're on a book tour. Where are you going on your tour?
Yeah, great. So I've been in LA. I'm in New York at the moment for the week. I'm going to an event in Colorado, which I'm excited about, in Vail, then back to LA. So sort of hitting the big two for this trip. But I'm in the US a lot, and we'll be back again real soon.
Well, what made you decide to do a book tour?
Well, a US publisher. So, Australia's got, 22 million people in it, which is, the size of just under California. So we've got a US publisher for the project. It's very much about the US base. We are selling it in Australia and across the world. Yet, the US is a massive market. So purely from an ROI and focus of what's going to get the best cut through and support of this message, it's, hey, America all the way.
Well, in the few minutes we have left, let me ask you this. In your experience, what are the 2 or 3 things you would tell a small business leader that you've learned that you'd like to pass on?
Oh, great question. I think it's really important to have a framework. Whether it is the 7 levers and 10% wins, that doesn't bother me. I think it's a great framework, obviously. Yet so many business owners, they may have read The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. It's almost like the Bible for entrepreneurship. But I have an issue with that book in that it teaches people the importance and the difference between working in a business and working on a business. And it's a very important distinction to make. Yet for so many business owners, once they make that distinction, they still lack the roadmap or the blueprint or a framework of what to work on. They might say, okay, Monday afternoon, I'm going to get off the tools and I'm going to work on my business. Yet what does that actually mean? Where are you going to focus your attention? What are you going to work on? And I think having a framework of any distinction is the first step to that success. It's that framework of, okay, this Monday, I'm going to work on X. Next Monday, I'm going to work on Y. And ideally, I would suggest a good place to start is work through the 7 levers. Just try it for 7 weeks. Next week, I'm going to focus on suspects. I'm going to try and get a 10% win on suspects. Following week, I'm going to work on increasing my prospects, the amount of people who put up their hand and say, yeah, I'm serious about being sold to. And work through the 7 levers as that framework of focus. And aim to get those little 10% wins, whether it's plugging holes right now to get a 10% increase or whether it is coming up with new creative ideas and ways to get 10% wins. I think that's the biggest gap for so many entrepreneurs.
Well, on that note, we're talking with Pete Wiliams. He's visiting us from Australia. He's got a terrific book on the 7 levers to significant growth. Pete, thank you so much. A link to your website will be on recalculating.biz tonight, where you can hear this and every other past and future Recalculating program. Pete, thank you so much for being with us. Tell me, Dan, tell me about your latest book.
My current book that's coming out, I should say, is Why Can't Grammy Remember Me? And it's really the first book written for children between the ages of 9 and 12 and their families, dealing with dementia. Dementia is a growing problem with the elderly in the United States and around the world, and we are not very well informed about what's going on, what's happening. So I wrote this book in the form of a mystery. And I have 2 little girls, 9 and 12, who have a magical power to seem to be able to find things that are lost. And so they go to their dads and moms and they say, we work all over the neighborhood helping people find things, and we seem to find things. And their dad says, yes, you have a magical talent to do that. And they said, we'd like to start a business to see if we can help other people. So they decided to start a business. The 2 girls' names are Hudson and Charlotte. And they start H&C's Lost and Found. If you've lost it, we find it. And so they build a business, and they convince the dads to build them an office and a treehouse in the backyard. And they get busy making posters and flyers trying to get customers. And their dads take them downtown, and they put them in the windows and on the telephone poles and light poles. And they go home, and first week goes by, and nobody comes. And the second week and third week, and nobody comes. They're really, really dejected. And the 4th week comes, and there's a knock at the door. And they walk over and open the door, and there's a young man standing there with one of their flyers in his hands. And he says to them, my dad says the reason why my Grammy can't remember me is because she's lost her memory. And your flyer says you find things that are lost. Can you find my Grammy's memory? Well, they don't know anything about memory. So they take his name and they go see their dads to see what can happen. And the story evolves into how they learn about what dementia is and what's going on in the body when somebody has dementia. And then they decide, while they can't find their customer's memory, they can help him build the tools to retain her in his memory. And so at the end of the book, there are about 10 to 12, 13 things that families can do together to work on to preserve the memory of Grandma and Grandpa, so the generations can know who these people were. And that's the story.
What a great book. When will it be available, and how can people get it?
Well, it'll be available on Amazon.com. A lot of people who have read it, who've had moms and dads that have been stricken with Alzheimer's or dementia, tell me that they really now begin to understand what's happening in Grandma's brain. And we took a different approach. Rather than do the typical brain cross-section, I work with the artist, and we design highways in the brain. And there's a brain of one of the little girls and the brain of Grammy. They both have highways, roads, but the girl's brain, everything is green and go. Grammy's brain is full of no left turns, do not enter, stop, no right turns. So all of the messages that need to come from our brain get screwed up, and we can't function. Great illustrations, though. Wonderful illustrations.
Well, say goodbye, Dan.
All right.
Time for us to go.
Thank you for joining us. And by the way, if you didn't hear all of today's show, you can go to recalculating.biz, and you can pick up this show and past shows to expand your knowledge as becoming more successful entrepreneurs. Thank you for joining us. and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for joining us on Recalculating. We hope the information you received on today's episode was helpful to you in starting and growing your business. Please go to our website, recalculating.biz, to contact us, to listen to past shows, and see special offers. Until next time, remember, if you grow, we grow. Join us next week for more helpful ideas to make your business a great success. Recalculating, a program designed to help you be successful.